And it's always useful before the chanting just to orient ourselves in the direction of kindness, in the direction of care, so that as we chant, we are bringing our heart to the words of the Buddha on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And so, as I mentioned before, the Metta Sutta, tonight we are delighted to have with us Cecilia Mitra. And Cecilia Mitra has a long history with the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. She's a retired lawyer from Singapore. And when she came to Western Australia, she commenced working here as a lecturer and then went into business with her husband. Whilst in Australia, Cecilia's done a lot of different forms of pro bono work for the Buddhist, well, a variety of Buddhist communities. And her leadership roles include the positions of President of the Buddhist Society of WA, President of the Federation of Australian Buddhist Councils. And in those roles, she has attended meetings in Australia and internationally on behalf of Australian Buddhist communities. Cecilia is the author of a book, Opens Like a Flower, Cut It with a Knife. I love that title. and she regularly gives talks and teaches meditation. So I'll hand over to Cecilia now, and I'll put myself on mute. And if Cecilia, you can unmute yourself, please.
Thanks, Catherine, for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. My topic today is adversity and resilience. Tonight, I want to explore how we can apply the Dharma when we face life's challenges, those times when adversity causes trauma and tragedy, which is so overwhelming that we become paralyzed. In those times, can we apply the Dharma? Let me first start with a fundamental truth, the truth of suffering. Suffering is universal. This is the first noble truth. No one can escape it. Every day we have, I wouldn't say little, but we have daily challenges. Irritations, frustrations, a barking dog, can have a peaceful day, a bad night. No, I'm not talking about these kind of problems or suffering. These we can deal with easily. We can brush it off for most of us. What I'm talking about is deep suffering that shakes our very existence. Suffering that makes you question life. The kind of examples would be a bitter divorce when custody matters are at stake and you don't even know whether you can get your children. A terminal illness when you have months to live, or a loved one has months to live. Financial ruin, or the loss of a loved one. In my case, I lost my 30-year-old son. So I had to deal with these things, and I'm here to discuss it. And of course, every loss is different, but the same principles would apply. I often hear the term carpe diem, seize the moment. And this is often used when fun times happen, exciting times happen, seize the moment. But if we are truly wise, when tragedy strikes, I think we should use the same term, carpe diem. Because it is at that very moment that is opportunity for us to grow. We can either spiral into despair and remain in that deep hole for a prolonged period of time, or that would be the excellent opportunity, the ripe opportunity for learning, for insights. Winds of change. Our life is like, there's winds of change all the time. Look at what's happening in Florida at the moment. That's what our life is all about. We sometimes bask in the sunshine of our life, thinking that tragedy is not going to happen. But tragedies and traumas will happen in our lifetimes. It's useless to ask, why did this happen? How could this happen? It's not useful, because we've had many, many, many lives, and our past karma catches up with us. Time is ripe. Conditions, it's all about causes and conditions, and it happens. And when it happens, of course, we'll be in a lot of pain. I'm not saying that we're not going to be in a lot of pain. I'm not saying that we should just brush it off, because we can't, and we will be in pain for a reasonable amount of time. But whether we remain in that hole for a prolonged period of time or forever and never come out of that dark hole depends on our own practice, depends on our own resilience. Building mental resilience is very important for us when we are well. It's like going to the gym, carrying weights for physical strength. We have to build mental resistance for good mental health. And the Dharma is excellent. Meditation, reading the suttas, listening to good Dharma talks. These are ways of us building mental resilience. My personal experience, some years ago, I found my 30-year-old son dead on the bed. Sudden death. What do you do? Of course I was. It was very painful. The pain actually paralyzed me for a while. And before that, I had been a Buddhist for a very long time. I was already holding leadership roles. I attended meditation retreats, sutta retreats. I practiced the Dharma. I meditated, quite regularly. But even with all of that, it was very, very difficult. So had I not had the background, it would have been even harder, I'm sure. So at that very moment, I had to put all of this to use, to the test. Use the Dharma as my medicine. Use meditation as my pill for recovery. Because, we all are learning the Dharma, we practice the Dharma, we read the suttas. But if at the time, if at our most difficult moments, if we are unable to use the Dharma, then what's it all about? It's just theoretical. The Buddha is often called the greatest physician. So the Dhamma is great medication. But how to use it? How to use the Dhamma when your mind is racing and everything is impossible? You can't even breathe. And, mental pain, suffering can actually cause physical pain. You can actually feel a lot of pain when this happens. And I'm sure, many of you have had difficulties and traumas. And that's probably why we are here talking today. It is difficulties that make you think about the deeper things in life. So when your mind is racing and you can't even sit still, how do you even practice meditation? For me, the way I did that was breathing in, breathing out. Whenever I couldn't breathe or things were too difficult. And I did this exercise several times a day, over and over again, to find those pauses from my grief. And after a while, I was able to sit longer and I was able to get back into my old meditation, only better, only more bliss and peace, because it was for my survival. At least I grow mad. So, I'm very grateful for the Dharma and the teachings of the Buddha. And after a while, it gave me clarity of mind. And clarity of mind allowed me to explore further, read the suttas, and peel off my pain layer after layer. And that's why I wrote the book and called it Opens like a flower, layer by layer. And when you get to the core, you're able to cut it with a knife, dissect it, and understand impermanence, understand dukkha, anicca, and anatta to a certain extent. I'm sure we know the story of Kisa Gotami. Kisa Gotami was a lady who lived during the time of the Buddha. When her only son died, she carried her son and asked for a cure. She carried her dead son from house to house or town to town to get a cure. And when she encountered the Buddha said, bring me a mustard seeds from a household that has not experienced death. If you can do that, I can help you. And Buddha was very wise because he knew it couldn't be done. So she went from village to village and she could not bring those mustard seeds because every household was touched with death. And that led her to the understanding of impermanence. And that led her to her enlightenment. And then there's another story of Patichara. Again, in the Buddha's time, Patichara was an amazing woman who not only lost her children, but lost her husband and her parents all on the same day. It almost made her mad, and she walked around naked. And someone brought her to the Buddha, and the Buddha taught her impermanence, and it sunk in her, and she became an arahant. She understood dukkha and anicca. So and what I'm saying does not just apply to the loss of a loved one. It applies to life when we're hit by tragedies, which we will be. We got to understand that that is the moment where we can open our minds to learn. We must be able to shift our perspective, and shifting our perspective is very powerful. We'll be able to see things more clearly. We start to find meaning in the hardest situations, and in so doing, we grow. If we are able to look beyond the pain and let the deeper insights help us see things as they truly are. If anyone has gone through grief and has read books on grief, you know that there are books on the stages of grief, 5 stages of grief. Some people call it 7, 5 stages of grief. I personally went through the stages of grief. Of course, these are spirals. It doesn't happen, exactly one after the other. You may go through one and then you come back again. And they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, before you finally get to the acceptance stage. And if you really look at the stages of grief, or the emotions of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, they're all rooted in delusion and hatred. Delusion and hatred. Because of our ignorance, we go through that stages of grief. I'm not saying that going through it is not a good thing, because we're human. We go through it. And finally, when we do get to the stage of gratitude, it will really change our perspective, and those rose-tinted glasses will finally fall off, because we will start seeing things as they truly are. One of the suttas that I pondered about for a long time was the sutta on the simile of the soul. this is a sutta where the Buddha said, even if low-minded criminals were tearing you from limb to limb, and if you had hate in your heart, you are not practicing my teachings. It seems pretty harsh, because how could you not have anger when low-minded criminals are tearing you from limb to limb? And, for me, death was the low-minded criminal. Death was the bandit. And stealing my son away from me. Of course, I was consumed with anger. I was consumed with guilt. I was consumed with blame. I could have done something better. It's my fault that I've outlived my son, And the more anger and guilt and blame, my emotions of negativity and hate intensified my suffering, became bigger. I think we all know the story. Ajahn Brahm tells us of the ugly, smelly demon that enters the palace. This demon enters the palace while the wise king goes for a holiday, and this demon is so smelly and ugly and horrible, and the palace guards shows the demon a lot of ill will and anger, and then the more anger it has, it feeds the demon, and the demon becomes bigger and bigger, and the palace guards react to this again with more anger, and so much anger until the demon takes over the space of the palace, and the guards got a bit panicky, and they called the king back, and the wise king started giving loving kindness to this demon, and then it became smaller. With each act of loving kindness, it became smaller. Finally, the demon disappeared. It dissipated. Initially, I felt that anger, and of course, we know that anger, guilt, and blame come from hatred. And so that was, the more I fed it with anger, guilt, and blame, the bigger the demon became, until I was consumed with negative feelings. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, my smile became reversed. I couldn't recognize myself. And I realized that I had to start forgiving myself. This is life. People live and people die. This is just the nature of the life. It happens all the time. And I started being compassionate to myself. If I could not love myself, if I could not show metta to myself, how could I come out of this? So I began to show metta, loving kindness, compassion, meditation, more meditation, reading the suttas. And I came out with more understanding, and I understood. Of course, I had to accept what happened. Acceptance is the key to recovery. Acceptance makes you no longer a victim of the situation, but a survivor. Because very often we feel like a victim of the situation because we feel some external force did this to me, or, how could this happen to me? This just causes and conditions. It is what it is. Things happen. Good things happen. Bad things happen. It just happened in our life. And how we react will determine not only our healing, but our future lives. Patichara and Kisa Gautami became liberated because of their understanding, the deep understanding of their suffering. So I no longer felt like a victim, but I felt like, this is just it. This is the life, and it gives me the opportunity to learn the Dharma, to understand that everything, all conditioned things are impermanent. And death can happen at any time. This old narrative that parents cannot outlive their children no longer became a narrative in my mind. I understood that I had to appreciate my life. I had to appreciate all those I loved now. Not, time was limited. Time, we don't know when we're going to go, basically. We don't know when our loved ones are going to go. So now's the time to cherish people around us. And acceptance led to gratitude. And instead of lamenting, lamenting I lost my son to sudden death, I started appreciating the 30 years of this beautiful relationship we had. How lucky was I? He was one of my best friends. So, the journey was over for us in this life. The journey was over, but the memories still remain. The good times are still there in my head, in my memories. And, I learned a lot of valuable lessons in his life, in his death. And I was very grateful. And I also started being grateful with all the other things in my life. And it actually not only made me heal, but I even was able to be happy. So that's my journey, and I'm sure we all have our own journeys, but the same tools can help us. So the practical tools for healing. How then do we reframe our minds from trauma and tragedy? Here are the few tools that I used and that were invaluable to me. Mindfulness. Start with simple awareness. If you cannot meditate because your mind is racing from what if, should have, could have, which is depression, to anxiety, oh no, what now? Worry. Stay in the present moment, even for a few seconds. That will help some clarities, that will bring peace and comfort. And that's really important when we're struggling through a difficult time. And after a while, it gets better and better if we use mindfulness as a tool. And this will lead us to better and deeper meditations. Practice self-care, compassion. It's so easy for us to feel metta for someone else, for an animal, and compassion, but it is difficult for us to forgive ourselves. And that's why we get stuck in a rut, because we can't forgive ourselves for things very often not even our fault, but we have very high standards and we blame ourselves. So we have to practice self-compassion and metta, starting from ourselves. Forgive ourselves for the perceived failures. Suffering is part of life, and we must give ourselves permission to heal. Gratitude. Focus on what you have rather than what you've lost. Even in difficult times, gratitude shifts our minds from lack of to abundance. Kind words by people, other loved ones you have, those beautiful moments you had with your loved one who has left because it was his or her time to go. As Ajahn Brahm says, the concert is over. We enjoyed it, but it's over. Our journey must go on because life is precious. And if we just spend our time resisting what has happened to us, we have actually not learned anything, and we've wasted our good, valuable life is precious. We need to understand that we too have to continue the journey, albeit without the loved one. In closing, life's challenges offer opportunities for growth. We cannot control what happens, but we can choose how to respond. By removing our rose-tinted glasses, we get a glimpse of things as they truly are: dukkha, anicca, and anatta. Dukkha, suffering; anicca, impermanence; and anatta, there is no self. Through loving kindness and gratitude, we can find happiness, even in tragedy. The Buddha's teachings are not just abstract concepts. They are tools to help us navigate life. When tragedy and trauma happens, we can resist and suffer, or accept and grow. Carpe diem. Seize the moment for insights that lead toward our liberation. Thank you. So now's a good time to meditate. Okay, so we will start the meditation. I'll just put the timer for 30 minutes. I have a good meditation app. Close your eyes. Sit in a comfortable position with your feet touching the ground. If you're sitting on the chair, we'll start with an awareness of our body. Feel the top of your head. Let the awareness go down to our neck. Down our spine, our backbone. Feel our bottom on the chair. Down to your feet. Feel your feet touching the ground. Up through your legs. Through your hands. Your shoulders. Your neck. Your chin. Space between your nostrils. Breathe in. breathe out. Leave your past behind you. Leave your future behind. Just be aware of the present moment. Rise the fall of your chest as you breathe. Now place your attention to the tip of your nose. Feel the air in, out. In and out. To leave you now to meditate. If your mind is wandering to the past or the future, bring it back to the present moment. Moment of freedom from the past or the future. You deserve this freedom. Enjoy it. Last 9 minutes of your meditation. Enjoy the peace. We're coming to the end of the meditation. Observe your breath. Observe your mind. Open your eyes. How do you feel? Was that a good meditation for you? Do you feel better? Now we have some question and answers. A question and answer session. Would anyone like to start with a question?
Can I go first?
Sure.
I just
Gloria.
wonder, yes, thank you for your sharing. I cannot imagine the pain of losing your son. I think it must be very painful, to be honest. And thank you for your meditation as well. And I just wonder, can you share a little bit on your thoughts on like the intense sense of loss over something that you didn't have in the very first place? Like, it's not like you have it and then you lost it, but like you didn't even have it in the very first place. And then I don't know, I just kind of feel like a sense of like emptiness or hollowness over the whole thing. And then it is like have a very like the sense of loss will sometimes from time to time just come up, and then I feel like it's tearing me apart. And then it's hard to deal with such a thing because it's like I don't know what I'm like lost at. Does it make sense? Like I don't know what I lost because
It does make sense because we've had many past lives, and sometimes that feeling comes because of something that happened in a past life, and it the conditions are right for you to feel that way. So the way to deal with sadness is to realize that life is a fabric of joy and sorrow. Joy happens, sorrow happens, and apply mindfulness practice. And you know that Jhana Grove is the best hospital. The retreat center is a great place for meditations. And for me, it actually, being at Jhana Grove for a while did help me heal. And I mean, the only way is to be applying mindfulness meditation. At this moment, there is no pain if you're in the present moment. The reason why you feel this sadness is either because of something that happened in your past, or your worry about something that could happen, anxiety, that something bad can happen. So the only way to deal with it is to stay in the present moment every time those feelings arise. Is that helpful?
Yes, I also heard about like people said about like stay in the present moment when the pain comes up. It's hard, but I know it's a way. So thank you.
And we have to try to be a little bit more resilient and meditation will help, because it'll help us when things do get difficult. But of course, everyone is different, and one good way is joining there are groups for difficult situations. For me, joining a bereavement group when it happened also helped me, because I realized that I was not the only one. Other people experience the same things, and then you don't feel like the victim of that situation. For me, and for you, if you're feeling sadness, it's only natural. Being sad is natural. It's just a natural part of life. There's a lot of joy in life too. Got to look at your life and look at the joy that is in your life, and try to change your perspective a little. Any other question?
Thank you.
No, is there any other question? What was I going to say? You look so sad. Smile. Be a little
I can't do
happy.
that right now, but yes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, guys. I'm raising
Hi.
my real hand. Cecilia, what do you think? I just have this thought that comes to me often, that humans, many anyway, are born with a sense of loss, with a sense of grieving, without experiencing the big losses. And then when the big losses come, it becomes more profound because we're more attached, even though we expect these losses from our parents, grandparents, certainly not our children, and not our friends or even our cousins for that matter. But I have a feeling, maybe what you said from past lives, but I feel like I've been grieving forever. But I have a lot of joy, but I have this heavy grieving.
We all know the Four Noble Truths, and we all know that craving causes suffering. We know that. We know that attachment causes suffering, but it is difficult to let go of someone you love. So, but through understanding of impermanence, slowly by slowly, you will learn to have less attachment. And as to the grieving, there was probably a reason why you're grieving. Your thoughts may go to something in the past, or your anxiety about the future. There must be a reason for your grieving, but consciously you're not aware of it. I think I've lost you. I can't actually hear you.
Oh, sorry, I muted.
Okay, it's good.
I kind of feel like Gloria, like kind of grieving for something that you don't even know you've lost.
Mm.
It's like mysterious. I like your other answer with the past lives because it's got a truthfulness in it, yet it's vague enough broad enough to accommodate a variety of these feelings. So when they do occur, maybe just think it could be a past life feeling. The conditions are similar, or the causes and conditions may have triggered something from a past life. I don't know. It can be
Yeah,
a helpful thought.
I think so, because even in this life, when you've lost someone, a song, and it could happen 10 years later or 5 years later, a song or something triggers that sadness. And so the same thing could happen from a past life. A memory is triggered. Yeah.
Sure, makes sense. It was a lovely talk and a great meditation. Thank you.
Thank you for attending. Any other questions? Are you in the US at the moment, Sky?
Yes, and it's only drizzling. I'm under tropical storm watches, and we've had such a rainy season. Talk about the rains retreat. But no, this is just a Florida hurricane season. It coincides with the rains retreat. But we're in a good position, but I haven't watched the news. I don't know what Central Florida or Western Florida. I'm Southeastern. So I'm right below the southern portion of the cone or the spaghetti or whatever they call it. Something to eat out there, a cone or a spaghetti. It's going to eat you.
I hope it all goes well in Florida. We're talking about
I
storms and tsunamis in our lives.
Yeah. I just say whatever is going to be, well, shall be.
Thank you.
Cecilia, I don't know if this is something that you've reflected on, but one of my areas of grieving at the moment is around the impact on the environment from humans. And I'm often looking at whether there's something I can learn and apply from responding to the loss of loved ones to a skillful way of responding to the grieving and the distress I can feel of the impact that humans are causing to the environment. I don't know if this is something that you've thought about, but if there are any reflections that you'd have, I'd be grateful to hear them.
I think everything is interconnected, and everyone, has a different problem. Everyone has something that affects them deeply, and for you, the humans causing the environmental changes to the detriment. I think we'll start with not having anger towards them. It's just deluded, and they're not taking care of the environment. You do what you can, doesn't mean you don't do the right thing. But at the same time, you can't allow yourself to be so affected by it that it affects your life. That's how I would look at it. But that does not mean that you don't do the right thing to encourage the proper care of the environment. you do the right thing. But there will be a scope beyond what you can do, and you might have to accept that not everyone is like you. But small changes will make the big change at the end.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we get really upset about what's happening around us, and, you know, oh, this person is very callous, and you get very upset. And if it's going to affect your own peace, then it's not useful to you.
It was useful when you said earlier on to somebody, sadness is part of life. And I think part of my distress is wanting to change how I feel about it as well. And there's just like, you know, a reminder, yes, of course. You know, the resistance to the distress or the resistance to the unpleasant feeling that I have, it's part of life. Mm.
But I'm not here to say don't do anything. No, just sit on your meditation stool, because every little thing we do does affect the environment. Being a good example, you know, if there's a protest and you think the protest is going to make a difference, go for it. Maybe lead the protest. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I speak?
Chris from Osaka, how's
Yes.
Japan?
Yes, I'm in Japan. I think the trick here is very much about, I think the trick here is very much about actually being able to experience joy and
Yes,
to
you're
find
absolutely
joy
right.
in the simple things. And for example, the sunrise in the morning. And I think Helen talked about the beauty of natural things earlier on. And I know, Catherine, you, after your retreats, you usually go on these amazing journeys in which you go to wonderful places in nature and surround yourself with nature. And these things can be very, very healing. And the other thing I find very healing is laughter with friends and seeing the irony of life in it all. Because life actually is full of these things that can trip us up. I recently had the privilege of hearing a woman who had lost her father, who was shot by the Pol Pot regime, and how she grieved and how she turned that grief into a desire to empower women in the village in which she lived in Cambodia. And it was a beautiful story. And in Laos and in Cambodia, where there's been great suffering, and in Vietnam as a result of the Vietnam War, people have more resilience. But then again, they have more sense of community than we have in Western countries. And that beauty of being surrounded by people and being held by people in an environment seems lost very much so when I go back to my home country, New Zealand. And it feels sad sometimes to be there. Whereas in Asia, I feel more comfortable. Would you like to comment? I don't know if there's a question there, Cecilia, but it's a ramble.
I think you're absolutely right. We often focus on the difficult parts and we forget to see the beauty and joy in life. Because life is beauty, joy, happiness, grief, sadness. It's just all interwoven. And we should be able to, if we're in the present moment, and be aware and be able to experience each of these moments as they are. And about being sad when something doesn't actually happen to you, but you read about it or you heard about it, it's very real, because we feel we're compassionate about that situation, that person who's experiencing what they are. And that sadness happens when it does. For instance, for me, I remember when I was in my 30s, I read about a 2-year-old boy who was raped in a hospital toilet and killed. Even though I didn't even know this person, it was in a different country from where I was, but I was so consumed with sadness by that, it actually changed a little bit of my worldview. And that's why I became a Buddhist. So yeah, sadness affects us. We can't even explain why it should affect us, but it does. And I like your way of looking at joy. Yeah, wonderful.
I think we in the West, unfortunately, think too much. And we don't put a full stop to our thoughts often enough. It's we can get carried away into these thoughts. Thoughts can take us away, and our mind can take us away, and we lose this kernel, this sense of joy that we can have and that we can experience in everything that we do.
Yeah. Observing the moment, being in the moment.
Being
Very
in the
often we're
moment,
in that
yes.
moment of beauty, but our thoughts are thinking about something else. You're right.
Yes, I never believed it. I've been going to Thailand for many years, and people would always, I'd relate my problems and difficulties and what I was upset about, and people would say, "Oh, you think too much. Come on, we're here. We're on the boat, and the waves are around us, and this is fun. And why are you thinking like that? You just think too much. Now, if you think too much, you'll go crazy." And I think that is a truth. And before I thought they didn't think so much because maybe they didn't. But now I'm sort of coming to the point in life as I'm getting older and longer in the tooth where thinking less is good, and putting a full stop to the mind when we get into these spaces.
Pausing,
Good.
yeah.
Just pausing that mind, or just watching it go past.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
And delighted to meet you tonight, Cecilia. Thank you.
Me too. Me too. Thank you. Yeah, Sky, did you want to say something? No.
I can add on that a little bit. I think that Chris had a really good point.
Sam.
Oh yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah, you can hear
Yes.
me? Okay. Thank you for your talk, and thank you for sharing your experiences. And to add on to Chris's point, I think sometimes, I haven't faced a lot of adversity in my life, but sometimes seeing others, I tend to maybe feel bad, or if something bad does happen, I think that there's like kind of a stigma of feeling happy afterwards, in the sense that it seems like maybe you didn't care about it to begin with, if you're feeling happy afterwards, or if you're able to get over it very quickly. I think it kind of comes with like a bad look. So I don't know if you have any words on that, of like feeling bad for maybe feeling okay after a short period after something bad happens.
I think that's guilt. That's guilt that you and guilt is from hate. Hating yourself in the form of guilt, and so you put yourself in that situation, afraid of getting out of that situation because you shouldn't be happy. But it's not about happy that that event happened. No, you're not happy. You're not happy when you accept something. It's not about liking what happened to you. It's about understanding this has happened. There's nothing I can do to change it. I need to learn from this. And that's why adversities are your teacher. Yeah. But yeah, it's easy to want to be in that sad state for a very long time, because it makes you feel good when you can bask in that sorrow sometimes. But I think we need to, that's not the teaching of the Dharma. And there's really, if you can get out of that depression, because depression and negativities would actually pull you deeper into it and deeper into it. Someone once said, when you are in the midst of a very difficult situation, I mean, like a really traumatic situation, it's like you're standing on the top of a hill, a very high hill. Either you fall or you look further out and you see things as they truly are. You can see the whole area around you. The choice is yours, really. And if being in that sad situation, in that state, is going to help you grow spiritually, yeah, maybe. But I think that sadness only promotes more sorrow and sadness. So there will be a stage where you have to tell yourself that I need to get out of this, if you can. Not, some people can't, and they need to have help. And there's nothing wrong with getting help. But if you can, through the practice of the Dharma, it's a good way.
Do you have any experience in helping people who are not familiar with Buddhism or the Dharma in this way? Because, you know, my partner goes through a lot of stuff, and I try to tell her, you know, acceptance is a big part of it. You know, you can't change it, but, you know, her struggles with her family and things like that. But it doesn't seem to help her because she's not really familiar with the things that I'm familiar with. So I wonder how to get through to someone who doesn't see things on the level that I have seen them, or that the way that Buddhism talks about it. Also, sorry, there's work in my house.
I think that the Dharma, the jewels of the Dharma, few can see it. And sometimes you can talk to them, you can explain, but they may not be ready to see it because they need something else, another thing. I'm not going to go into different religions or whatever. But for myself, I actually have talked to people going through the same thing from who are not Buddhist. And I think the Buddhist way is so palatable. It's so beautiful. It's so logical. It's easy to talk to someone who is in a difficult situation and willing to accept and open. And one of the ladies I spoke to, I think told me that she was actually on the verge of suicide. And, you know, what I told her really helped her. And then that was one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I felt that the Dharma is so beautiful, and it is a really good medicine for someone going through something difficult. And in the book, I shared all the stages I went through and how the Dharma helped me heal. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Cecilia, for sharing your experience and your wisdom. We have come to that sad hour of finishing our time together, but knowing that we'll be coming back again next week. I think it's for our final Rains speaker, and then the week after the monks will be returning. So Cecilia, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to wrap us up with and send us off with, or not.
Yeah, actually, this is the book I wrote, and it's sold at Dhammaloka, and the proceeds go to charity or goes to Dhammaloka. And yeah, if someone is truly struggling with grief, perhaps it might help them. It's also in jhana growth, I think. Yeah.
It's such a
And
strong
thank you.
title.
Thank you again for inviting me. And I really enjoyed speaking to all of you. And yeah, thanks.
Most appreciated. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Cecilia.
Thank you.